Greetings once more, dear friends. Dragon here once again today with a movie review, and for a fairly recent Radiance release. This is By Man's Face Shall You Know Him by Tai Kato. The first Tai Kato movie I'd actually ever seen, but one of two already released and another one on the way from Radiance. A filmmaker I was really not familiar with at all until these Radiance releases kind of came to light, but one that I'm rapidly falling in love with. I believe that Radiance has also produced a book. Tom Mez has written a book for Radiance about Tai Kato, which I have yet to receive, but do have on order, and I'm intrigued to kind of dive into his filmography more. But this movie in particular, really an incredible way of launching into the filmography of somebody who I think really deserves to be far, far, far better known outside of Japan. I think there's been a few retrospectives of his work. There was one down in London, and I think there's been several overseas. And for those who are in France, I think one of his other movies, the other one that was released by Radiance, The Executioner, is going to be shown as one of the midnight movies in this year's Cannes Film Festival. But anyway, getting on to By Man's Face Shall You Know Him, a pretty incredible post-war, very early Yakuza-ish movie, but not really about the Yakuza particularly. Really, that's just kind of the closest touchstone I can kind of give you to let you know what sort of movie that it is. I want this to be spoiler-free because I think if you're remotely interested in seeing the movie, I certainly don't want to spoil the beats for you, so I'm going to be as vague as I can do as regards to story plot. But basically, our main character is a doctor played by real-life former Yakuza Noboru Ando, who appeared in quite a few movies for Tai Kato, and again, we're seeing another one fairly soon. 18 years in prison reunites Tai Kato and Noboru Ando again in another movie. But essentially we have a doctor who's returned from World War II. This is basically, if you could kind of almost think of this as Godzilla -1 minus Godzilla, because Japan looks very similar to how you will see Japan looking in Godzilla -1, so it's still really suffering the ravages of World War II. Everything's largely in ruins. There has been a massive kind of inundation of different nationalities coming in, so there's an awful lot of Koreans there, quite a few Americans there, and there's an awful lot of trouble on the streets. So the kind of Korean gangs in particular in this movie are kind of running rampant, but really very difficult for the kind of the local community to try and control them. They do reach out to try and get some help from the Yakuza, but the Yakuza, their numbers have been so decimated by the war that they can't really help, and they suggest basically kind of going to the tough as nails doctor Noboru Ando is playing, and really try and kind of get something up from him. He really doesn't want to get involved, but the movie kind of jumps between three different time periods, and he encounters, working for the gang, a man who he had known in the army, basically, essentially. So they had at one point kind of been kind of colleagues in the war, and so he's attempts to kind of try and bring about a peaceful resolution to the problems that are happening, which ultimately ends up not really working out that way. If anything but, really, it descends into kind of quite a significant level of madness as the movie kind of continues on, and he's drawn more into the machinations of what the Korean gang's doing. They're kind of really running riot throughout the kind of locals, the sort of main marketplace that we kind of see most of the movie taking place around, this kind of little community marketplace, and the Korean gangs are causing a huge amount of problem there. I think they're called the Nine Heavens Gang. Ultimately, he's drawn into a kind of pretty lethal battle with the gang towards the end of the movie, after his brother, his very hot-headed brother, played by another director actually, played by Juzo Itami, who many people will know as being the director of Tampopo and The Funeral, but he's here in an acting performance, and he's very, very hot-headed and ends up attempting to try and take matters into his own hands, and then is captured by the gang. So it's up to Big Brother Doctor to try and save the day, which he ultimately does. That's, I think, about as much of the story as I want to tell you. There is a love interest in the movie that I don't want to tell you too much about her arc, played by Sani Nagahara, apologies for my very bad Japanese pronunciation, who was the wife of another director, Kinji Fukasaku. So there's a really great little feature on this disc by her son, and also the son of Kinji Fukasaku, and a director in his own right too, Kenta Fukasaku, who kind of speaks a little bit about his mother's work and about his father's work in relation to Tai Kato's work. I think his father was really quite a big fan, and you can certainly see the influence of this sort of movie on the Battles Without Honor series, which would come a bit later. And one of the actors, one of the kind of Korean thugs here, is being played by Bunta Sugagara, who would go on to be in most of the Battles Without Honor series. But yeah, just beautifully realised and really, really fresh and vibrant for a movie made in 1966, particularly how it deals with time and jumps back and forth between these different time periods. We see some sections at war, and then we kind of see sort of two more modern sections. Noboru Ando quite easily identifiable by a massive scar that he had in real life, and they kind of sort of lean into that in the movie a little bit, where it's very much a part of his history. He is playing a doctor, so he's trying his best to kind of help people, but you can tell that he's a dude who doesn't really take any shit ultimately, though he is trying his best to live a peaceful, quiet life, and really that just kind of goes spectacularly, pretty blood-drenchedly wrong towards the end of the movie, and the last reel is pretty spectacular. As far as the disc itself, the film looks absolutely incredible. I think the restoration was done by Chico Studios, who were the ones that actually made the film. Tai Kato would jump back and forth between Toei and Shochico. This was the first movie that he made for Shochico, and I believe that they were the ones who did the restoration. I suspect Radiance has maybe done their magic on it too, because it looks absolutely fantastic for a movie that in the 60s. It's still very, very vibrant. Cinematography is incredible, and Tai Kato's use particularly of kind of close, almost some diopter shots, but particularly kind of very low angles and almost extreme close-ups in some cases is pretty beautiful. We'll get into that in his other movie, which I will cover, I, the Executioner, which Radiance have also put out, and I would absolutely also highly recommend. I'm going to do a separate review for that in due course, but just getting back to this one for the time being. There's 2 video essays on here, so as the one I already mentioned by Kenta Fukasaku, speaking mostly about his mother, but he does speak about the work of Tai Kato. There's also a great visual essay by Nathan Stewart, speaking about Tai Kato's work and kind of placing this movie in context amongst his larger filmography that was really, really good. The video extras that Radiance are producing, really excellent, so they're maybe not going to the extent of putting commentaries on unless it's really, I think, absolutely essential for that particular movie, and in some cases I think kind of they're going for, always seem to be going for quality over quantity, and all the extras that they are producing, very thoughtful, just really entertaining and really informative, kind of gives you a much better sort of sense and appreciation of the movie you've just watched, which is ultimately what special features should do. It's a really great booklet inside, which contains a really incredibly well thought out, very well realised essay by Mark Schilling, largely focused on this one particular movie, but kind of by extension speaks an awful lot about Noboru Ando's history and Tai Kato's history. Really, really informative and highly recommended. I've been thoroughly enjoying the booklets that come with all Radiance releases, and that's pretty much it. So if it's one that you're on the fence about, I would absolutely implore you to dive in. I think it's one of the limited editions that's still available, and do absolutely track it down before it kind of sells through and kind of goes into the kind of released version, if that definitely happens, because it doesn't always for every single Radiance release. It just depends on how well it's sold. But certainly when I checked the Radiance website before making this, it was still available in its limited edition form, and it's just an incredible way of jumping into a really exciting, really interesting, and particularly kind of skilled filmmaker's work, really. Seeing how different The Executioner is as a movie. Some of the same sort of stylistic tropes are evident in a few places, but radically different movie, and we'll kind of get to that in due course. I'm very, very excited for 18 Years in Prison, which will be coming out later in the year too. And I'm really just incredibly excited to kind of see what else Radiance are doing, because every release at the moment that I've been picking up, I've been blown away by. By Man's Face, Shall You Know Him was no exception. So yeah, 2 thumbs way up for me. Thank you so much for watching this. If you made it to the end, I absolutely salute you. If you're enjoying what I do here on the channel, then do please consider clicking the red button and subscribing. I do also have a Patreon if you want to help support the channel that way, and the more support I'm able to get, the more movies I'm able to cover. So yeah, links down to that sort of stuff down below. I thank you once again for watching. I've been the Fanatical Dragon, and I will see you on the next one. Take care.